Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all from Seoul and of course from Berlin. Welcome to this webinar, Educating for Sustainable Futures through UNESCO Sites, co-hosted by the Korean and German National Commissions, UNESCO. My name is Kyung-Woo Han, and I'm Secretary General of the Korean National Commission to UNESCO. Before we begin, allow me to briefly introduce the background to this workshop. Our commission wanted to share expertise within ESD through UNESCO to highlight some ways in which ESD can be kept relevant, effective, and interesting, making use of the marvelous strengths offered by UNESCO sites. We shared our initial proposal with the German Commission, a leader in this field, and they graciously agreed to co-host the event with us and provided numerous insights and ideas on how to organize the session. So now, I would like to hand over to Schleicher, the Secretary General of the German Commission for UNESCO, so that he too can offer some introductory words.
Yeah, thank you, dear Dr. Hahn, for your very kind words. Our two commissions indeed share a great common passion to foster and strengthen synergies across UNESCO programs and networks, in particular when it comes to education for sustainable development. Therefore, we were more than delighted to join your excellent proposal for this workshop, and I am immensely happy to welcome you all here to our 1 hour long special session as part of the SDGs Marketplace. With the ambitious goals of the Agenda 2030 in mind and taking into account current challenges, it is crucial to us to highlight once again the importance not only of SDG 4 and education as key enabler for the agenda, but also SDG 17. Strengthening global partnerships and sharing our expertise and experiences with each other across national boundaries is vital for achieving the agenda. And this is exactly what we would like to do in this session, to learn from each other and to exchange ideas on how to highlight UNESCO designations, such as World Heritage Sites, Global Geoparks, Biosphere Reserves, Creative Cities, Learning Cities, as highly successful in promoting peace, innovation, and sustainable development at the local level, but also internationally through being part of an international network. One example, for instance, being a memorandum of understanding between the Wadden Sea in Germany and Korea on wetland education in the frame of ESD. We shall hear more about it later. So let me give you a short overview of what's to come. We will start with 4 short presentations focusing on the implementation of ESD at designated sites from various perspectives. A warm welcome to Mr. Yang Bo Kim and Mr. Yang Mo Kim joining us from Korea, and Dr. Jutta Weber, Dr. Klaus von Hirschelmann, and Anja Schesinski joining us from Germany. And probably you can see them all right now because they turned off their camera. Thank you. Let me also extend a warm welcome to our colleague, Mr. Guy Debonnet, joining us today from the UNESCO World Heritage Center in Paris, who will share his comments with us from UNESCO's perspective. After that, we invite you all to join the discussion, share your questions, thoughts, and ideas with us on innovative methods and the potential of UNESCO sites for educating for peace and sustainable development. Let me conclude by sharing a few examples on how we at the German Commission have been supporting and encouraging such synergies, both at policy and practical level. For example, following the establishment of the UNESCO Global Geoparks designation in 2015, we included ESD as a core national designation criteria. We are also advocating for strengthening such criteria at international level. From 2016, we have promoted ESD implementation within the geoparks through expert workshops and networking opportunities with a peer-to-peer approach at the heart of our activities. We also conduct capacity building workshops with cultural and natural World Heritage sites, with Biosphere Reserves, and are currently implementing a 3-year project for strengthening whole school approaches within the German UNESCO associated school networks. Last but not least, we established a national ESD award scheme in cooperation with the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, showcasing excellent ESD initiatives across all education areas with many awardees being among the UNESCO networks, such as Biosphere Reserves, Learning Cities, Heritage Sites, or ASP.NET Schools. However, we feel that there is still a much greater potential, and hence are very grateful for the opportunity today to share our experiences, but also to learn from each other.
Thank you, Secretary General. The Government Commission has been doing such a wonderful job. And I think we all could incorporate your practices in our schools and on our side, the Korean National Commission has been focusing on three main areas of the domestic implementation of this. First, we operate the Korean National Commission, which comprises 20 experts for the government and other relevant institutions. We also conducted research, published resources, and hosted policy forums to tackle major issues. And finally, for more practical hands-on level, we have an initiative called ESD official project. This supports institutions just push and implement their own small projects on ESD. I hope that gives you a good basic idea of what we, as the National Commission for UNESCO, are doing regarding this. Before we start the presentations, I'd like to invite you over to join us through Slido so that you can interact with us. You can connect to Slido on your computer or mobile phone by simply searching SLIDO or typing sli.do in our browser. Once you enter Slido, please enter code 051821. This indicates the month, date, and year. You can also see the link in code. You will find the short first question. From which city are you joining us? I will enter forward. Also, if you have any questions for these speakers, you can write them here, and we will try our best to answer them during the question and answer time. Yeah, I can see, of course, apart from Berlin and Seoul, I see Bonn, Cologne, Husum, Germany, Barcelona, Lekling, Frankfurt, Hong Kong, One George, Muscat, Cottbus, and Tony, and Penny. Yeah, Penny. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our first speaker, the young Kim. Mr. Kim, who is originally the Director General of the Bureau of the Environmental Station Island, and currently is seconded to UNESCO headquarters as an expert in the man and biosphere city. Today, he introduced us to GCIDA, the Global Training and Research Center for internationally designated areas. Moreover, he will tell us how the center will implement the ESD in regard to UNESCO designated areas. Mr. Kim, I hand the stage over to you.
Okay, hello. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. So I share my document. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Today I'll make a presentation about the Global Research and Training Center for internationally designated areas for promoting ESD. First, I'm talking about interesting Global Research and Training Center for internationally designated areas. Until now, there are about 3,500 internationally designated areas based on nature in the world. Internationally designated areas include the Biosphere Reserves, the Global Geoparks, the World Natural Heritage, and Ramsar sites. Especially 474 areas carry multiple forms of international designation, including 56 areas with 3 multiple forms of international designation, and 1 area with 4 multiple forms of international designation. Jeju is a special one, having 4 multiple forms. That's why I come here. In 2012, the IUCN World Conservation Congress in Jeju adopted a resolution to establish an integrated management system for the areas with international designation. And the Korean government proposed to UNESCO for the Category 2 Center for the idols in Jeju. Lastly, the UNESCO General Assembly in 2019 adopted it. Now the Category 2 Center is scheduled to open in the first half of 2022. Here, there are role. Okay. Here is their role and the function of the T2C. I'll test. I have limited times. Now I'm talking about the city's core goal for ESD 2030. Here's the content on the UNESCO official website on ESD for 2030. Okay. I'm talking about the strength of the Jeju C2C for ESD. Jeju has 4 MIDERs in the world. It can play a role as a total integrated field training site for ESD. And secondly, Jeju is designated as the Island of Peace and Island of Peace, an international conference city, and a special self-governing province by the central government of Korea. Also, 50 million tourists visit Jeju every year. This tells us why Jeju can become the most place for the global spread of ESD. Thirdly, as a local, international government and international organizations support the C2C together, it is one of the new governance models for collaboration among stakeholders for ESD. Here is the 4 core C2C goals for ESD. Firstly, C2C will be an educational institution for all without discrimination for ESD. C2C will do its best to provide systematic and sustainable education opportunities without discrimination for all. C2C will be able to train expert managers and administrators of EDS in the third world. C2C will develop and provide IT and web-based EDS program for all. Secondly, C2C will establish and implement training courses in various fields to achieve the ESD with SDGs goal. For example, when it comes to sites, C2C will do primary education on eco-friendly life in biosphere reserves. education on green economy and ecotourism in global geoparks, and education on the value and inheritance of nature in World Natural Heritage Areas. The Ramsar site will become an education place on natural ecosystem, especially for export. C2C will often as the cost for field export. International organizations and government officials in connect with local universities. And thirdly, C2C will strengthen the role as an educational hub for achieving EDS goals. For that, C2C will do its best to build human infrastructure and accountability to ensure the sustainability of ESD and to secure regional connectivity. For example, C2C will operate a network of international experts and raise funds by connecting with judge-based public companies. Fourthly, C2C will establish an EDS training base corresponding to the same situation as COVID-19. For example, C2C will create the contact education manual, which is not between men, but between man and nature, as the ecological experience system for ESD. We'll check the table, and the outdoor sports means golf. You can understand the golf system. So one group for persons, but it's allowed by the government. But the side ecological experience not allowed by the government in this situation. It's some real situations now. So that's why I explain about that. This table is the core roadmap for the action. C2C will go for the first, second, third stage project for the ESD. Because the limitation of presentation time, I briefly summarize the presentation. If you like more details, please contact me. Thank you for your kind attention to my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim, and also for this short and precise presentation with a lot of inspiring elements. The new center is a truly exciting prospect to look forward to, and we wish you all the best and great success in the coming months in developing this center. Also, Jeju will be hosting the 9th International Conference on UNESCO Global Geoparks, which will take place in September this year, and our next speaker is hoping to join you there. I hand over the floor to Dr. Jutta Weber, Managing Director of the UNESCO Geopark Bergstraße Odenwald, who will introduce their educational work on ESD and promoting the SDGs, whilst at the same time cooperating very closely with nearby World Heritage sites, Messelpit Fossil Site and Abbey Altenmünster of Lorsch. Dr. Weber, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Secretary Generals from both commissions, dear members of the commissions, colleagues and participants. I'm very glad to share with you our experiences related to education for a sustainable future by capacity building, networking, and strategies. Next slide, please. First of all, where are we situated? We are situated in the southwest of Germany, 50 kilometers south of the city of Frankfurt, with an area of 3,800 square kilometers, 3 federal states, including 7 counties and more than 100 member communities. We are members of the international geopark scene since, meanwhile, 20 years. Next slide, please. In Germany, we are one of 7 UNESCO Global Geoparks, and internationally, we are one of 169 UNESCO Global Geoparks in 44 countries, and we are all members of the UNESCO International Geoscience and Geoparks Program. Next, please. What are we doing in our geopark? We connect in a holistic view our planet Earth with the natural environment, the cultural achievements, and indeed the people who live in the territory, related to how are we part of this planet and how do we treat our natural resources? How do we change our natural environment to a cultural one? And how do we want to live today and tomorrow? So we do this by preservation, education, cooperation, and sustainable development. Next, please. We are connected in a huge regional network. I will not focus on all aspects of this network, but I will give you a small insight into our stakeholders in the cooperation with schools and universities, and of course, the cooperation with our World Heritage Sites. Next, please. Related to the international networking, we closely cooperate with the UNESCO Global Geoparks worldwide. We improve our quality and development of potentials and strategies. And we cooperate also with other designations of UNESCO inside the territory and also abroad. And this includes also contributions to common programs of UNESCO, like the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. And the UNESCO Global Geoparks are considered as model territories for the implementation and communication of these goals. Next, please. So the Global Agenda 2030 is our guideline and at the same time our overall umbrella, and we support a series of goals which you can see in the upper part of the slide. And one of our key tasks is ESD, because we think if you experience something, you can understand it and you can act responsible. Next, please. So our strategic pillars for ESD are own capacities, for example, with our Geopark Rangers or an SDG concept platform and academy, the cooperation with Geopark partners from the regional to the international level, which includes also the World Heritage Site, the cooperation with educational institutions like Geopark schools and universities, as well as UNESCO schools. Next, please. A small insight into the Ranger program. We have started this program in 2000. Today, we have 25 Geopark education experts with a nature and geoscientific background. Their tasks include information booths, guided tours, and of course, education for sustainable development in many ways. We call them our professionals for educational discoveries. Next, please. The cooperation with partners include indeed our UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which are Messel Pit, it's a natural site and partner since 2003, and also Lorsch Abbey, which is a cultural site and a partner since 2004. Our common goals are working together regionally and internationally, creating synergies and contributions in a common way to the Global Agenda 2030. Next, please. Here are some examples related to the cooperation with our UNESCO World Heritage Sites related to Messel Pit. For example, we have developed geo-workshops like time travels. We have offered arts and literature adventures like author readings or land art experiences. And we have also developed educational games, vocational trainings, and especially during the last year, due to the corona pandemic, we have also developed some videos together. Next, please. Related to the cooperation with educational institutions, we work with Geopark and UNESCO school education centers and universities. For example, we offer project weeks, we organize nature experiences, we implement teacher training, we offer outdoor learning experiences, as well as hands-on workshops, and indeed, together with the schools, international exchange like Erasmus or Comenius programs. Next, please. So where are we going with our ESD? Currently, we are in the last steps of a participatory strategic concept for ESD. We develop a virtual Geopark ESD platform and academy, including events, offers, and exchange for partners as well as for the public. And we are applying for a federal ESD certification. In the regional, national, and international context, we are working closely in several networks, and our goal is implementing a real ESD academy in our territory. Next, please. So we are connected from the regional to the national and international level, beginning from the regional network to trans-regional workshops, including national platforms like the German Nature Park Association, indeed the German Forum of UNESCO Global Geoparks, and thankfully the German Commission for UNESCO, who supports us in many, many ways. Thank you very much, Dr. Schleicher, and also the UNESCO Global Geoparks program. Next, please. So ESD is our Geopark thematic and regional network driver. ESD is our essential part of the holistic Geopark philosophy. ESD is also the motor for our activities related to the Global Agenda 2030. And with all these aspects, we contribute to the main UNESCO objectives, which are peace building and understanding between the nations. Next, please. So ESD is our education for a sustainable future and also our education for transformation. And we do all that for the next generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Weber, for your insightful presentation. The next presentation features Mr. Yang Mo-Kim, who is a primary school teacher in South Korea. The presentation has been pre-recorded in Korean, and it has English subtitles. Please wait first. So that we, meanwhile, we'll solve the problem.
So we start with the other presentations.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good idea. So I take over to introduce two other speakers who will present jointly. It's Anja Czesinski and Dr. Klaus von Hirschelmann. Both work in the very north of Germany at the beautiful coast of the Wadden Sea. The Wadden Sea has 2 UNESCO designations. It is both a World Natural Heritage Site and a Biosphere Reserve. And for both, ESD is a guiding framework for the educational activities. A warm welcome to you both, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having us here. And if we could see your presentation, we'll be happy to start. It's a lot about cooperation in the international Wadden Sea, so we take the opportunity here to jointly present what we do on an international and regional level in the 2 UNESCO designated areas. It's about education for sustainable development in the Wadden Sea World Heritage Site and Biosphere Reserve. My name is Anja Czesinski. I'm with WWF Germany and coordinate the International Wadden Sea School, which is the World Heritage Education Program. And with me here today is Klaus von Hirschelmann, who's with the National Park Administration in Schleswig, Holstein, and in charge of the Biosphere Reserve educational aspects there. Can we see the next slide, please? Thank you. Well, the Wadden Sea, most of you have certainly heard of it before. It is located in Central Europe in the North Sea Basin. It's the largest unbroken stretch of mudflat systems worldwide. It's shared by Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands. So it's a trilateral eco-region which is protected as national parks and nature reserve. As we heard, the entire area is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and large parts of it are also designated Biosphere Reserve. We have about 4 million inhabitants in the larger Wadden Sea region and about 10 million visitors per year in the region. Can we have the next slide, please? Information and education, both for the local inhabitants and visitors, play an essential role in conservation. That's why we, from various conservation perspectives, focus so much on education, with education for sustainable development as a guiding principle. We have, if you look at the entire trilateral Wadden Sea region, about 60 visitor centres and a total offer of around about 20,000 guided tours per year. There are online platforms, educational networks and programs, both on the national and trilateral level, covering the informal, formal and non-formal education sectors. We have a common strategy for national and trilateral education activities, and various offers ranging from the very local to the international level have education for sustainability certifications. And with this as a background, I would like to hand over to my colleague Klaus now to have a closer look at the Schleswig-Holstein Wadden Sea Biosphere Reserve. And if we can have the next slide, please.
Well,
and the next speaker.
Thank you. Let me take you for a little trip onto the northernmost tip of Schleswig-Holstein and into the Schleswig-Holstein Wadden Sea. You see a little map that has lots of small islands, tidal flats and such. And this is the characteristic of the Schleswig-Holstein Wadden Sea. It's the Schleswig-Holstein Wadden Sea National Park, and of course, the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve since 1990. The Schleswig-Holstein Wadden Sea was formed by drastic and dramatic storm surges in the medieval ages, leading to this jagged coastal landscape with smaller and bigger islands. And we will see on the further slides how the landscapes over there really looks like. Next slide, please. This is a typical scene from the Halligen Islands. Halligen Islands are small islands not protected by embankments or dikes that are flooded during storm surges during winter. And these islands are inhabited by, in some, about 250 people living in those or on those dwelling mounds, and they are drastically, so to say, wide open to the storms and waters forcing in from the North Sea sometimes. Next slide, please. This is really how it looks like and why it is so important for the people over there to have something like a sustainable perspective, and of course, a true inert initiative in sustainable education. You see on the top slide, there is a photo from the, in the summer, it's low tide, you see the mud flats, and in winter time, the same island is just flooded so that just this dwelling mound with the farmhouse sticks out of the, well, really the North Sea, the North Atlantic. So people are very confronted with every question of sea level rise, global warming, and so on. And so there is a true interest in getting things done to the better. Of course, protection of the terrestrial and marine environment is valid or vivid or very important for the economic basis of ecotourism. These islands have just small capacities for visitors to come, and they want to see pristine nature. Schools, of course, is a problem in areas like this. Remote islands divided by mud flats, non-shipping waters. So every island has to have its or their own school. So there is little, well, we call them midget schools with one teacher teaching sometimes just one student. And that's up to 9th grade. Everything that goes further on has to take place on the mainland. So kids and families have to move away from these islands as well. Next slide, please. The Biosphere Halligen. people over there, they did not like the idea of living in a reserve. So they just said, we are the Biosphärenreservaten, those small islands, formed as a local community initiative to strengthen regional identity. You remember I talked about several small islands. All of these had their own, so to say, sometimes their own dialect, their own language. And by forming the Biosphärenreservaten with the aid of course, federal, European, and global funding, they were able to form something like a common identity to struggle the tasks to come. Next slide, please. Now to some, so to say, to move away from the bright pictures, this is how the whole organization takes place. There is the Association of the Hallian Alliance, and they are supported by a Biosphere Advisory Board. The National Parks Office supports all of those efforts by means of work and of course of funding. There is an executive working group tackling actual projects or phases they are walking through, and all of this is, so to say, conducted or led by the management center of the biosphere, where there is a secretariat where all the, so to say, the computer work is done. But this is just to make projects work to gather fundings for further projects, of which we see some in the next slide, please. Here are some of the projects the Biosphere people developed themselves. They had a nice project of children explaining their biosphere to visitors and people from the mainland. There was a project where it was that dealt done by school kids about prime climate and the biosphere. The question of global warming, sea level rise, and so on was really presented in a charming way. There are the annual Brent Goose Days, not only aiming at ornithologists or birders, but at the general public that comes in spring to visit a number of activities, of plays and so on, and of conferences. There are efforts to maximize the sustainability of Halligan Island or coastal agriculture. Coming back to the climate problem, there is a vast initiative now to form something like a CO2 neutral, well, biosphere Halligan, I have to say. Of course, we all want to have a CO2 neutral biosphere in total, but here it's the Biosphere Halligan. And because all of these ideas worked so well, there is presently an expansion of this biosphere area onto another island taking place. This was just examples of how we do it in the Schleswig-Holstein province. Of course, in Hamburg, where they have a small Wadden National Park, and in Lower Saxony, where there is a comparable sized national parks of the Wadden, there are similar efforts taking place. That was so far that I could do. I'll hand back the floor to Anja to have a view on the broader perspective of the Wadden cooperation. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Klaus, for this insight into regional cooperation and ESD approaches. And coming back to the international level, as I said, it's a lot about cooperation and communication. Now the slides are gone. And about 18 years ago, the International Wooden Sea School was established. If we can have the slides back, you get some more images. Otherwise, I'll just keep on talking to give a broader perspective to environmental education at the various local and regional levels. And we've been operating as World Heritage Education Program ever since the Wadden Sea has been recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site back in 2009. So the International Wadden Sea School provides a joint framework for Wadden Sea education, and it's based on a strategy on, we have this, the slide number 10, please, and have it in presentation mode. That'd be just perfect. And so a couple of years ago, we compiled a joint strategy on education for sustainable development and World Heritage interpretation to give all these brilliant regional, national, and international approaches a joint framework. And we based this strategy on the existing concepts. And the idea was to complement the national interpretation strategies. And education for sustainable development is one of the common principles all educational activities are based on. If we can have the next slide, please, you can see some examples of what we do. It's a lot about cooperation, about networking, bringing together multipliers of Wadden Sea interpretation together for sharing ideas and experience. On a more central level, we develop educational resources with a strong focus on the international dimension of the Wadden Sea, on partnerships, on skills development that can be used in all regions with all the visitor centres, teaching resources with ESD competences on various fields of issues, supporting primarily the SDG number 14, but certainly also supporting many others. And yeah, one of our key issues is international cooperation. We're a shared World Heritage Site, which has importance also on a much broader scale. We have the flyways, and if we can have the next slide, please. For several years, I had a memorandum of understanding, a Wadden Sea Korea, and I'm very happy to be here today with the Korean colleagues, and this has been a truly inspiring exchange of experience and ideas across two flyways, about 10,000 kilometers apart. We're striving for the same goals, and we benefit both through study visits in each region, through really the exchange of experience by international colleagues, much for conservation management and also for sustainable education. And with this, I would like to hand back to Klaus.
Yes, thank you. As you've seen, the work for the SDGs is a task for many different organizations and agencies on the different levels of education and of daily work, daily life in the Wadden Sea area. And we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to represent our small part of the Wadden Sea SDG work in this forum. And thank you very much.
Hershman, for sharing with us such inspiring cases of educating for sustainable futures through UNESCO Natural Heritage, Geoparks and Biosphere Reserves. I believe there is much to learn from both these cases, and I hope we will have the chance to introduce your cases with the schools and relevant centers in Korea. Now, let us try once again the pre-recorded presentation of Mr. Kim Young-mo.
네, 안녕하세요. 유네스코 문화유산 도시 안동에서 펼치는 지속 가능한 미래를 위한 교육을 발표하게 될 영주초등학교 교사 김양모입니다. 반갑습니다. 저는 경상도 영주에 있는 영주초등학교에서 근무를 하고 있습니다. 그런데 지난해까지는 제가 안동에서 근무를 했었거든요. 안동에서 14년 동안 근무를 하고 지금도 안동에 살고 있습니다. 그래서 제가 이 자리에서 주로 소개한 활동들은 안동에서 제가 학생들과 함께 했던 그 활동을 소개하는 내용들이라면 주가 될 것 같네요. 안동은 그 한국 정신문화의 수도라고 불리고, 그 다음에 한국 독립운동의 성지라고 불립니다. 그 지방자치단체 중에서 전국에서 두 번째로 문화재가 제일 많은 곳이거든요. 지난번에 제가 어떤 자료를 찾다가 보니까 무려 국가지정문화재가 305점 있었어요. 그만큼 또 많은 곳이며 지금 오늘 발표하는 곳이 유네스코와 관련된 문화유산이라면 유네스코가 정한 문화유산 무려 6개가 있는 곳입니다. 여기 보이는 것이 첫 번째가 화해마을이죠. 화해마을은 경주 양동마을과 함께 한국의 전통마을로 지정됐었고요. 여기 보이는 2개는 도산소원과 병산소원인데 이거는 한국의 소원으로 지정돼서 지정됐었습니다. 그 다음에 여기 있는 거는요, 봉정사라는 절입니다. 얼마 전에 한국의 사찰들하고 해서 한 9개 사찰이 같이 유네스코 세계 문화유산에 지정됐었거든요. 그래서 우리나라, 요 봉정된 대웅전은 우리나라에서 가장 오래된 목조 건축물이기도 합니다. 이 2개는요, 유네스코가 정한 기록유산인데, 이 같은 경우는 지금 요 판 보이죠? 이게 책을 만드는 장판인데요. 그래서 유교 장판이 유네스코가 정한 기록유산으로 지정됐고요. 이 같은 경우는 글자 수가 되게 많죠. 여기부터 시작해서 최대 길이가 한 100m라 그러는데 영남에 한 10,000명이 되는 유생들이 기록을 했던 영남 만인소라는 것인데 이거는 유네스코 아시아 태평양 지역의 기록유산으로 지정되어 있습니다. 발표할 내용은 첫 번째는 세계 유산을 활용했던 다양한 교육활동이고요. 두 번째는 제가 몇 년 동안 중점적으로 했던 그 문화재 지도 만들기에 대해서 한번 말씀드려 보려고 합니다. 자, 첫 번째, 세계 유산을 활용한 다양한 활동입니다. 자, 첫 번째로 보이는 것은요, 지금 첫 번째로 보이는 것은 문화유산을 만들어 보는 활동인데요. 지금 이 친구가 들고 있는 것이 바로 뭐냐면 도산소원입니다. 안동에는 문화재를 관련된 단체가 굉장히 많이 있어요. 이따가 소개하겠지만 대표적인 단체가 안동문화지킴이가 있고요. 그 다음에 도산소원 선비문화수련원이 있는데 이런 각각 단체에서 학교에다가 이렇게 교육 자료를 굉장히 많이 주고 있습니다. 그래서 학생들이 그 단체랑 같이 연합해서 그와 관련된 수업 시간을 만들게 되고요. 저랑 함께 해서 만들게 되고 그와 관련돼서 그 교구들이 굉장히 많이 있거든요. 그래서 만들기 교구를 이렇게 활용했던 수업입니다. 두 번째는요, 바로 요 분이 중심인데 요 분은 안동문화지킴이에 있는 문화재 강사님이세요. 안동문화지킴이 같은 경우는 1999년에 결성된 단체인데 안동의 문화재를 이렇게 지키고 보호하고 알려주는 단체입니다. 이 문화재 단체에서 내놓은 모토가 바로 지키는 사람이 주인이라는 얘기가 있거든요. 문화재는 지키는 사람이 주인이고 그거를 알리고 많이 퍼뜨리는 사람만이 굉장히 그 의미가 있는 의미가 있다고 생각하는 단체입니다. 자, 다음 활동은요. 안동의 문화재 캠페인 활동이에요. 학생들이 모둠을 나눠서 안동의 문화재를 소개하는 여러 자료를 만들고 이걸 학교 여기저기에 게시한 활동인데요. 제가 문화재에 대해서 좀 관심이 있었던 것도 있지만 학생들한테 안동이 물론 이제 우리나라에서 안동의 문화재가 많지만 안동 지역의 문화재를 전문적으로 그런 수업하는 그런 것이 잘 없어서 저 같은 경우는 안동의 문화재를 아이들한테 소개하면서 그거를 캠페인 자료를 만들어서 학교 여기저기 게시할 수 있도록 자료를 만들었거든요. 두 번째는요, 안동의 문화재 지도 제작입니다. 요게는 지금 2018년도의 자료인데요. 안동의 문화재 지도는 제가 2016년부터 제작을 하기 시작했어요. 그리고 2019년과 20년에는 제가 살고 있는 와롱맨 지역의 독립운동가를 주로 알아보는 지도를 제작했었는데 이거 전부 다 아이들이 만든 겁니다. 아이들이 다 쓴 글이고요. 여기 있는 QR코드를 찍으면 아이들이 다 영상이 나와요. 그래서 아이들이 직접, 학생들이 직접 그곳에 가서 그것을 소개하는 영상을 만들고 그걸 QR코드로 넣고 그 다음에 불가피하게 그곳에 못 가는 아이들은 소개하는 문구를 만들었어요. 여기 잠깐 읽어드리면요. 낙동강에서 많이 잡히는 은어를 선생님께, 아니 임금님께 진상하기 위해서 쓰기도 하였고 원래 용도는 아이스크림을 만들, 얼음을 보관하는 창고였다고 한다 돼 있죠. 그 아이들 말로 바꿔서 아이들이 직접 쓴 글이거든요. 그래서 아마 이거를 처음 느끼셨던 분들은 되게 재미있으면서 그 의미를 딱 드러날 수 있는 그런 말이 아니었을까 생각이 듭니다. SDGs에서 17개 목표들이 있는데 아마 여기 있는 자료들이 그 17개 목표들을 전부 다 실현할 수는 없었을 겁니다. 그러나 우리가 몇 가지를 좀 짚는다면 첫 번째가 양질의 교육을 의미하는 SDG 네 번째 목표라든지 그 다음에 지속 가능 도시와 공동체를 만들어가는 SDG의 11번째 목표에 달성 기여하고 있다고 생각이 듭니다. 그래서 활동을 하면서 아이들은 자기가 살고 있는 지역사회에 대해 생각 한번 해보고요. 그것을 지키고 문화재를 잘 지켜나갈 수 있는 방법도 한번 생각해 봤었고요. 그 다음에 거기 있는 사람들이 왜 그 문화재에 대해서 잘 모르고 있었는지에 대해서 한번 생각해 볼 수 있는 그런 다양한 관점으로 살펴볼 수 있었습니다. 이상으로 제가 활동했던 세계유산교육과 ESD 연계성 사례를 소개했습니다. 짧은 시간의 발표라 이렇게 많은 걸 소개할 수 없었지만 이 사례가 세계유산교육이라든지 ESD 교육에 대해서 좀 더 많은 논의를 할 수 있는 그런 좋은 계기가 되었으면 좋겠습니다. 네, 감사합니다. 네.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim Young-no, and thanks to all the speakers for the most interesting and meaningful presentations. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Guy Devonnet to the stage. He's the Chief of Natural Heritage at UNESCO World Heritage Center and has graciously joined us to comment on the previous presentations and also share with us the world of World Heritage Center regarding ESD. Over to you, Mr. Devonnet.
Thank you, Secretary General, and thank you to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to provide some comments on this fascinating subject. And also, I want to thank the previous presenters for the inspiring examples that they have provided in their presentations. As you know, the World Heritage Convention focuses on the idea that there are heritage sites which are of value for humanity as a whole, and highlights the need for the international community to work together to protect these sites and to transmit them to future generations. Since its adoption almost 50 years ago, the World Heritage Convention, I believe, has become much more than an international legal instrument between governments. It now seeks to mobilize all the stakeholders for the conservation of these places of outstanding universal value. And for that reason, we consider that education is a very important enabling factor for the successful implementation of the Convention. The Convention is also increasingly recognized as a tool for sustainable development and as a tool for the implementation of the SDGs. For this reason, the General Assembly of the World Heritage Convention adopted in 2015 a policy on the integration of a sustainable development perspective into the processes of the World Heritage Convention. The overall goal of this policy is to assist state parties and all stakeholders to harness the potential of World Heritage sites and heritage in general to contribute to sustainable development and therefore increase the effectiveness and relevance of the Convention while respecting its primary purpose and mandate of protecting the outstanding universal value of the sites. And like the World Heritage sites, also the other UNESCO designated sites can be important places to implement the sustainable development goals, including through education. The examples presented today clearly demonstrate how these sites are using actions focusing on education for sustainable development to make a real difference and to ensure that UNESCO designated sites are part of the solutions we need to achieve sustainable development. In this respect, we are also very excited about the new Category 2 Center, which will open in Jeju Island in 2022, to work specifically on UNESCO designated sites. What better place than Jeju to have this center, as Jeju has all the 3 UNESCO designations and also a Ramsar site in a wetland of international importance. We have high hopes that this center will take on the issue of education for sustainable development and will further work on ensuring exchanges of experience between World Heritage sites, man and biosphere sites, and geoparks on how to effectively promote the sites as learning laboratories for sustainable development. Finally, I want to highlight the importance of involving the youth in our efforts to protect our heritage. As mentioned before, the World Heritage Convention is all about transmitting our common heritage of outstanding universal value to future generations, and therefore mobilizing the youth is of utmost importance. The World Heritage Center has a long history of working with young people through our World Heritage Education Program, and one of the annual flagships activities is the organization of the World Heritage Young Professional Forum in the margins of the meeting of the World Heritage Committee. These meetings serve as a platform to bring young professionals and heritage experts together to foster intercultural learning and exchange, and to debate about common concerns and to discover new roles for themselves in heritage conservation. And as part of the extended 44th session of the World Heritage Committee this year, the World Heritage Forum will be organized from the 5th to the 9th of July under the theme of World Heritage and Sustainable Livelihoods. The forum will highlight the importance of heritage for societies and livelihoods, and therefore explore its great potential to contribute to social, economic, and environmental goals, ensuring sustainable livelihoods across the various dimensions. The call for participants is now open to participate in this forum, and I think this is a great opportunity for young people to join us for this exciting event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Demonet, for your most insightful comments and UNESCO's commitment. And I guess we all agree on your words about the significant and sustainable impact of UNESCO conventions. There is a great potential for interlinking UNESCO sites with ESD, and I hope the webinar today will trigger greater engagement around the world in this respect. We can now continue with some Slido results. As we had no concrete questions, we can look at the result of the poll. And there was the question: in which UNESCO designations or networks do you see the most potential to implement ESD? And the winner is Biosphere Reserve, followed by natural heritage sites. Great, so there is a strong interest, and I guess there will be more results when we meet next time, inshallah, and we will see them, some results of ESD in some of these designations. There are other suggestions in this slide. And there was the other question: what UNESCO designation would you like to link with ESD? And creative cities, concrete sites were mentioned as well. So you can still have a look at the slido.com website. And if there are any questions left, you can send us the questions through the chat system or via email. But now I guess we arrived at the end of this session almost. So I hand over to my colleague, Dr. Hahn.
I'm a little surprised that the UNESCO Creative Cities Network ranked below than I expected. It might be a problem with the lack of efforts, shortage of efforts of the UNESCO Creative Cities Network in public relations, because it is to promote sustainable development of cities, and it's ranked quite low. Okay, well, I think we can all agree that while concise, this has been a very constructive session. I apologize for the technical glitch we had experienced. It went perfectly well, but things happen. So I trust this webinar is the first step in bringing stakeholders together, presenting some of the cases and hearing from you who are here. I hope the discussion we had today will develop in the future as projects within and among countries to link UNESCO designations and ESD. And I hope to see you all in the near future in the process of doing this. Once again, I would like to thank the German Commission for co-hosting this session, and I hope this meaningful cooperation will continue.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn, and your team at the KNCU for making this session possible. We certainly look forward to continuing our cooperation with you and have another meeting at the next ESD conference. And thank you, dear ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today and sharing our interest and your thoughts on how to use the potential of UNESCO designated sites as learning laboratories for societal change towards sustainable development. We all know the next 10 years are crucial for adapting to the necessary changes, and I guess the new opportunities of virtual meetings and digital meetings might speed up our progress even. So let's keep this fruitful international dialogue going by continuing our discussions and networking, for example, in the Berlin Lounge, strengthening existing and forming new partnerships, also across national boundaries on ESD at designated sites. Goodbye from our side and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
See you again. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.